In the automotive world, sometimes a car will go through a major restyling and you'll think, oh wow, they did a really good job changing the look of this thing. And then of course there are times when you'll look at the refreshed model and think, ugh, what the f were the designers thinking when they allowed this thing to leave the factory showroom floor? Today I've got a vehicle that represents the latter. This is the 2019 Hyundai Elantra. So as always with exterior design, that's always something that's very subjective, and some of you may disagree with me entirely when I talk about the front fascia of this car, but this is honestly the most controversial change for the 2019 Elantra. When you first look at it, take it all in, because literally it's got so many hard lines, so many triangles. Literally, the person who designed this thing must have had a thing for triangles. The front fascia to me literally looks like a trigonometry equation. There's a triangle here, there's a triangle here, there's another sharp curve here. It's just way too much. It really starts to resemble kind of like a Pokemon character, a Voltorb, to be honest, when I look at the front fascia. I just still haven't warmed up to it. I think the previous generation looked so much better. And again, if you guys disagree with me, feel free to leave that in the comments below. Regardless, the front fascia, obviously, big changes. There's a refreshed grille that kind of follows the theme that Hyundai's been going with their Cascade waterfall style. The LED running lights have been moved from the lower part of the front fascia to this upper portion of the headlight where it kind of accentuates the headlights. This limited model that I'm showing you is the top of the line trim, and it does come standard with LED low and high beam headlights, but it's got an incandescent turn signal here. There's some vents over here that kind of help create an air curtain over the actual wheels or cool off the brakes. And overall, it's just a very polarizing look that I personally think is probably one of the most unattractive compact sedans on the market. From the side profile, thankfully the new Elantra isn't as offensive as the front fascia. Remember, this car shares a platform with the Kia Forte, the all-new Kia Forte, which I actually really liked and I think is a very stylish vehicle, so Hyundai decided to go in a completely different direction. Now, Hyundai does continue to offer this thing in 6 different trim levels. This one being the Limited does come standard with these 17-inch alloy wheels, riding on 225/45 series tires. I don't particularly love the wheels with the directional. There's so many spokes. It's just a little bit too busy for me. If you guys prefer a better looking wheel option, you can go to a sport trim that gives you an 18-inch wheel that just looks a little bit better versus the wheels on this limited model. Now, the Elantra sedan, this generation, first came out back in 2017. It represents the 6th generation. And when Hyundai redesigned it, they stretched the wheelbase by about an inch. It's got the same wheelbase as the Honda Civic at 106.3 inches long and an overall length of around 180.9 inches long. This is roughly about an inch or two shorter than vehicles like the new Corolla, the new Jetta, and the current generation Honda Civic. Now the rear, you still have a semi-independent twist beam suspension. If you guys go for the sport trim, you'll get a fully independent suspension. And then if you guys get the base SE trim, you'll actually have rear drum brakes. The SEL and up trims, like this limited model, will have the rear disc brake options. And overall, compared to the curvaceous look of the 5th generation Elantra, which had that swooping coupe-like look, Hyundai definitely decided to go with a more traditional two-box shape with this current generation Elantra. From the rear, you can see the changes are also pretty significant for this refreshed model. Not quite as offensive as the front fascia, but I think Hyundai actually did a much better job changing out the rear look of this vehicle for 2019. You can see you've got an LED combination taillight on this particular trim, just an incandescent turn signal over there, and then you've got the Elantra kind of spelled out. There's a limited badge over there. There's a little too much badging for my taste. I just didn't think Hyundai needed to do the Elantra spelled out. There's some black piano trim over here in the lower fascia with some fake vortex generators, and then the limited version doesn't actually give you any visible exhaust tips like you might get in the sport trim level. Now, just like the new Sonata or the refreshed one, there's a little area there where you can push to open up the trunk lid, and it's actually a really cleverly designed area where they hit it. The trunk is actually pretty generous. This is measuring around 14.4 cubic feet of space. It's a little bit less than what you get in the Civic, but it kind of matches what you get in the new Corolla and the new Jetta. The seats, as you can see, they fold down 60/40, and then if you look underneath the floor over here, Hyundai still gives you a temporary spare tire. So you've probably had enough about me complaining about the looks of this thing on the outside. Let's hop into the interior. Now, as you can see, this limited model does come standard with Hyundai's intelligent access key with this brown fob. This is basically their current key fob. I've shown you this key before, but just like every other car, just keep the key fob in your pocket or your purse. Push this button here, that will lock the door for you, and then if you want to unlock it, Hyundai doesn't do a sensor on the back of the handle. You have to touch the button again, and that will unlock the door for you. Now, my tester has a pretty bland combination. It's gray exterior, gray interior. If you really don't want your car to stand out, just get this color combination. I don't particularly love it, but again, that's kind of my personal taste. The limited model does come with these heated leather seats, which are again not cooled, but it was one of the first vehicles that came with two-person memory seats. That was kind of unheard of in this compact sedan segment. You have an 8-way power driver's seat again, which, I mean, the seat itself is very comfortable, not going to really hold you in place with bolstering extensions and whatnot. Remember, that's not the Elantra's mission. The steering wheel has been slightly updated. The dash has been slightly updated for 2019. But getting inside the vehicle, you can feel it's got a traditional sedan step-in height, and then you're going to instantly notice the open and airy feel that this cabin kind of gives you. And then when you shut the door itself definitely doesn't sound as solid as some of the competition. It just sounds a little tinny. There's a little bit of a vibration when I shut that door, so it doesn't really add to the impression of quality. Now, when you want to start the vehicle up, just put your foot on the brake, push this button here to fire up the engine. Now you can see the gauges have been updated for 2019. There's just a slightly different font. You still have that 3.5-inch helper LCD screen. And you can hear the engine is pretty unremarkable. It's just an economy car, 2-liter 4-cylinder engine. Now, in terms of the rest of the materials, you can see the dash still remains this soft touch injection molded plastic. There's some aluminum look trim here that accents the dash. There's a carbon fiber, a fake carbon fiber trim that's on this new part of the instrument panel hood. And then on the door panels here, it's actually just hard touch plastic with more of that fake aluminum trim. The door handle here, it kind of accents and integrates into this aluminum trim. It's slightly padded down here, but I'm surprised it's not leather stitched. The window is only one-touch automatic up-down for the driver, not for the passenger front window. There's a few more controls over here for your lane departure alert, your stability control off, and then your blind spot warning. Hyundai gives you hard touch plastic on the door panels here, and then there's a little bit more storage. Now the steering wheel, as you can see, it is tilt telescoping with a really good amount of adjustability, which is nice. No paddles on the wheel. You'd get that with the dual clutch model on the sport trim. A fair amount of buttons over here. There's a nice little thick rimmed leather wrapped wheel here. And then there's like an interesting little indentation here that kind of shows where the bottom of the wheel is. The sport model gives you a flat bottom wheel, which is definitely nice. The center stack here hasn't been changed. This is the upgraded 8-inch infotainment system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You can see there's the current Hyundai navigation system. Pretty unremarkable, gets the job done. You're not going to really win any awards here for something that's super, wow inducing. The infotainment system, you can see there's your presets there whenever you want to set them and whatnot. So again, this is unremarkable. It gets the job done. It's very class competitive. When you put the vehicle into reverse, just a standard backup camera with trajectory, no parking sensors, no other features like 360 camera or automatic parallel parking feature and whatnot. You can see dual zone climate control is included on the limited trim, which is nice. You have very good knobs and buttons here for your volume, your tuning, your climate control and whatnot. Your 3-level heated seats are down here. They have room for cooled seats. You can get cooled seats on some trims of the Forte and the Elantra GT. To adjust your drive mode, you can see there's a sport setting, there's a smart mode, and then there's a normal mode. We'll go into the drive modes later on. This controls the 6-speed automatic, but this is probably going to go away for a CVT transmission for the 2020 model year. I like the wireless charging pad that the limited trim gives you. I'm surprised there's no lid that closes here to kind of hide your stuff if you're going to have your phone there. Traditional handbrake, which is definitely not the norm anymore. Everyone's going to go into electronic. You have 2 large size cup holders here. There's a nice little armrest here that slides forward and adjusts. There's pretty good storage there. Just a standard USB charger over there. It doesn't actually connect to the infotainment. That one is over there. The glove compartment, as you can see, is pretty big size actually. It's damped but not lined with felt. And then the seats, they are pretty comfortable and supportive, just unremarkable looking. And then above you, standard size sunroof. Hyundai doesn't do a pano sunroof. They do that on the Elantra GT. But overall, the design definitely is a little bit more traditional. If you don't like that floating tablet style display, you're going to prefer this. But just keep in mind that some competitors offer a much more interesting looking design, but this is definitely playing it safe. If that's what you want, that's what the Elantra definitely delivers. So when you look at the back seat of the Elantra, you can see in terms of spaciousness, this is pretty class competitive to what you get in most of the other competition. Not the biggest, not the smallest, but it's kind of right in the middle. Hyundai says the legroom is around 36.8 inches long, which is pretty good in terms of the compact segment. You've got a nearly flat floor here, so you could theoretically put 3 people across. You've got, one single map pocket here. Surprisingly, I feel like the pre-refresh model had a couple of features that this one is lacking. For example, my limited model, it does have a nice armrest here that folds down with 2 cup holders, but there's no rear seat vents. I feel like some competitors offer that. And then the old Elantra used to offer heated rear seats, but this one's missing heated rear seats. So a couple of features that Hyundai has taken away. The hard touch plastic materials on the door panels here are carried over from the front seat, so there's a little bit of cheapness there. And then of course no panoramic sunroof. Instead you just have a pretty good amount of headroom here, which is nice. I'm only 5'7", but overall the back seat is pretty class competitive, but just not totally memorable. So under the hood of the 2019 Elantra, Hyundai again didn't really make any changes. Did they need to make changes? No, not really. Most models are going to have this 2-liter carryover new 4-cylinder engine with port injection. It's actually the same motor that's in the redesigned Kia Forte. It still makes 147 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque. Now there's also an Eco model that has a 1.4-liter engine with a 7-speed dual clutch. And then of course there's the Sport trim, which has the bigger 1.6 turbo with up to 201 horsepower and 195 foot-pounds of torque. Now apparently the 2020 Elantra will actually swap out the 6-speed automatic that this one has for that new IVT, that CVT transmission they just introduced on the Forte, which should improve the fuel economy because this one as it sits is rated at 28 in the city, 37 on the highway, whereas if you guys go for the Eco model, that'll do up to 32 in the city, 40 on the highway. The Kia Forte, if you remember, does 30 in the city, 40 on the highway, so that's something that Hyundai could improve when they switch it out to the IVT transmission. Now as this one sits, it weighs around 2,900 pounds. It still uses regular gas. This one is only front-wheel drive, of course. Let's get it out on the road and see how it all performs. So it's hard to believe that the Elantra name has been around for nearly 30 years, and this model has always been a very competent, well-priced, easy to live with commuter car, and this current generation basically carries on that torch. This is a really easy car to live with on a daily basis. It's just a rather unremarkable, very boring car, especially if you guys don't go for the Sport trim with the 6-speed manual, which is the first time Hyundai really added a good degree of fun to this vehicle. But the limited model with its traditional 6-speed automatic, with its very soft, compliant ride quality, with its buzzy 2-liter 4-cylinder engine that takes some time to get up to speed. I mean, this is just an everyday, regular kind of car that most people are going to just drive to and from work. It's going to get a good gas mileage. It's going to be cheap to own, cheap to maintain. And that's basically the mission of the Elantra. Now, when you get it out on the highway, this is where a lot of you are going to be driving this thing out on your commutes. The road noise is higher than what I expected it to be. Some of the newer competitors like the Mazda 3, the new Jetta is quieter than this. Even the new Corolla, I believe, is quieter than this. The acceleration is just unremarkable. The 6-speed automatic, though, I do prefer this actually over the CVT that's in the Forte, which is a shame because this CVT is going to be coming into this car. It's just, it doesn't make this engine quite as buzzy. Like the CVT in general just makes a 4-cylinder more and more buzzy. So that's the reason why I prefer the 6-speed auto. I mean, granted, I do notice that it feels more sluggish than the CVT in the Forte, and of course, you're going to get slightly worse fuel economy. Now, in terms of just driving this thing normally, it actually is very easy to see out of. You have a very good view out of the front, big side mirrors. This particular one has the adaptive cruise control with full speed stop. It's got automatic braking. It's got active lane keep assist, which doesn't work quite as well as some of Hyundai's newer products with their more advanced driver assistance tech. The road noise and the wind noise in here, again, is a little bit higher than I expected. The seats are okay in comfort, but they are a little bit hard for me. Some competitors I've noticed have slightly better seats. And then, of course, the ride quality with this one having that semi-independent twist beam suspension in the back is definitely a little bit more bumpy. I do notice the fact that it's a little bit harsher considering this car has smaller 17-inch wheels. I just expected the ride quality to be a little bit softer, but I mean, really, it's just a decent commuter car. I wish it stood out a little bit more. This really doesn't stand out. Now, acceleration-wise, I mean, it will get up to speed relatively well if you put your foot down hard, but I did notice that, again, some of the competitors with their Turbo 4s, with their bigger displacement engines, have more power. That's the whole reason why the Sport exists. You probably want to get the Sport with the dual clutch, which I don't really like the dual clutch. Get it with the manual. That will lower the fuel economy, of course, but you'll have a nice, added measure of fun, which this base model is clearly lacking. Now, corners have never really been the Elantra's strong suit, and this normal limited model with its eco-minded tires and its soft suspension and squealy tires. I mean, honestly, I think it's hilarious how the tires are screeching so bad. Get the sport trim if you truly want to get a good handling Elantra. This one in general is fine, but you're probably just going to be finding the limits of this sedan very quickly. Put our foot down hard here with the traction control off. And you can see this thing is sluggish. It takes probably around almost 10 seconds to get to 60 in this car. Eventually it'll get to 60. The quickest of the segment will do it in under 8 seconds. So again, there's an Elantra Sport for a reason. Now, in terms of the fuel economy, this base motor does get better gas mileage than the Sport, obviously. In my week's worth of testing, I've been averaging around 26 miles to the gallon in mostly city driving. On the highway, 35 mpg is pretty attainable. But again, the Kia Forte with its CVT gets better gas mileage. The new Jetta also got better gas mileage. The new Civic gets better gas mileage in the real world. So the Elantra is definitely starting to fall behind, but expect that to be rectified for the 2020 model year when Hyundai eventually adds that CVT transmission. But I mean, overall, as a commuter car, there's not really much to complain about. It's you know, it's going to get you to and from your destination with very little fuss. The problem for me is there is very little fuss. I want something with a little bit more spunk, a little bit more attitude. So here in America, the Elantra nameplate continues to be a relatively strong seller, with Hyundai moving a little over 200,000 units in all of 2018. So after spending the week with the 2019 model, you can see quickly just how fast this segment of vehicle is changing, because everyone seems to be going to crossovers. Sedans have to become more stylish. This is kind of where Hyundai is overreacting to the criticism of this generation. I actually really preferred the looks of the pre-refreshed model as opposed to the looks of this one. And really, if you want to buy the Elantra sedan, you may as well just get the Kia Forte because it's a better looking vehicle, or the Elantra GT, which is technically a different vehicle, but it gives you that hatchback practicality. Personally, for me, looks are always subjective, but I'm not really a big fan of the look of the refreshed 2019 model. But regardless of how I feel about the design, this is still a really well-rounded compact car that drives extremely well. It gets good gas mileage, it's inoffensive. It'll be a great commuter car, especially if you guys are looking for a strong value, decent interior room, good tech features, but really, there's a lot of other competition out here, and I'm just not entirely sure the Elantra continues to stand out in a good way, whether you like the design or whether you just prefer to buy a vehicle with this particular name brand. But with all that said, what's it going to cost to put a 2019 Elantra in your driveway? Well, this vehicle starts at $17,100 for the base SE model. I highly recommend going to the SEL model, which will give you rear disc brakes and all the driver assistance tech that most of these vehicles are starting to come with nowadays. My limited model starts at around $22,995. That gives you the leather, the LED headlights. My tester with the Ultimate package that rolls in the upgraded head unit here and there, the different interior options, the memory seats, which is definitely one of the first that this vehicle used to offer. Stickers for just over $26,000, which is actually a little bit less expensive than most of the competition, where vehicles in this segment can now kiss $30,000. But I just kind of recommend checking out the sister vehicle, the Kia Forte, if you guys prefer a different look. And keep in mind the 2020 model will probably be replacing its 6-speed automatic with that new CVT transmission, which should improve the fuel economy. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2019 Hyundai Elantra sedan. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.